all the blankets are gone. Their blanket they sleep with, they don't leave anywhere without them.
Good. Is there any of her clothes, anything like that missing?
Yeah.
It didn't look like she went through and packed up a bag or anything.
This and all that with Bob's.
Did she tell you anything about leaving, moving out?
Not moving out. I mean, the last time I talked to her was this morning. She said she's gonna take the kids to a friend's house, and then that's where she was gonna be. And then I've texted her today and never heard anything. But cars here. Cars are here. Unless somebody came and picked her up. But the people that I know.
It is the morning of August 13th, 2018. Detectives step carefully into a quiet home in Frederick, Colorado. The garage door creaks open. A friend stands outside, worried, her voice shaking as she explains that Sean is missing. Inside, the house feels still. Too still. They call her name again. No answer. Her phone rests on the couch. Her purse is there too. Her car sits in the garage, with the children's car seats still strapped inside. Nothing is taken. Nothing is moved. And yet Shanann, a pregnant mother of 2, has vanished. This was not the scene of a woman who had walked away from her life. It was the beginning of something far more sinister. But what investigators were about to uncover would shatter every illusion of the American dream. Before we dive deeper into this chilling case, I want to hear from you. Go down to the comments and tell me 2 things: where in the world you're watching from, and what time it is right now as you're listening to this story. It's always fascinating to see how true crime brings people together from every corner of the globe, at every hour of the day. I'll be reading through them, so don't be shy. And if you enjoy deep dive true crime documentaries told like this one, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications. That way you won't miss the next story waiting just around the corner. To anyone scrolling through social media, Shanann Watt's life looked like something out of a magazine. Her posts painted a vivid portrait of a woman who had found it all: love, family, and purpose. She wasn't just sharing pictures, she was sharing her heart. Clips of Bella twirling in a princess dress. Little Celeste, nicknamed Cece, giggling as Shanann chased her around the house. Snapshots of family trips, warm dinners, birthdays filled with balloons and cake.
Tell me you love them.
You love you.
Say love you.
Candy.
Oh yeah, shoot, that's in here.
It was a carefully documented life of joy. Shanann herself radiated energy. Her friends described her as driven, determined, someone who lived every day with intention. On camera, she spoke openly about her struggles and triumphs, about overcoming health challenges, about finding a partner who supported her dreams. That partner was Chris Watts. In video after video, Chris appeared calm, steady, and soft-spoken. When Shanann announced her pregnancy with their 3rd child, she surprised him by wearing a shirt that read, "Oops, we did it again." Chris smiled, nodded, and gave a quiet laugh.
We did it again. I like that shirt. Really?
Really?
That's awesome. So pink means...
That's just the test.
I know. It just says the pink is going to be girls.
I don't know. Just the test.
That's awesome.
To the outside world, it seemed like a moment of pure happiness. But beneath the surface, cracks were forming. Friends noticed something about Chris. In early videos, he leaned into the camera, his arm around Shanann, his smile natural. But slowly his demeanor shifted. He no longer seemed fully present. His expressions grew flatter. His smiles, less genuine. For Shanann, the camera was a way to connect, to celebrate, to share her life with family and friends across the country. But for Chris, the lens revealed something different. His silence. His distance. his growing absence even when standing right beside her. And yet, no one could have predicted what was coming. The world saw only what Shannon wanted to show, the perfect picture. Friends adored their bond. But they began to whisper the same unsettling question. Why did Chris's smile keep fading? As Shannon's pregnancy moved forward, her heart overflowed with anticipation. She was carrying their third child, a boy they had already named Nico. To her, this was the next beautiful chapter in their growing family. But to Chris, it seemed to be something else entirely. Shannon could feel it. The warmth that once defined their marriage had cooled. His embrace was rare. His touch was fleeting. And his words, too often replaced by silence. Late at night, when her worries swelled, Shannon turned to her phone. She confided in friends through text messages, unfiltered, raw, and painfully honest. She wrote that Chris no longer showed her affection, that she felt unwanted in her own home, that his distance made her feel like a stranger in the life they had built together. In one message, she admitted she was scared. Scared of losing him. Scared of raising 3 children without the love of the man she once trusted completely. Her closest friends could hear the change in her voice. They described her as still strong, still hopeful, but worried. Her once confident tone carried cracks. She spoke less about her excitement for the baby and more about how Chris seemed to be slipping away. She tried to believe in her marriage. She defended him when others expressed concern. She told herself it was just stress, that he was overwhelmed, that once the baby arrived, maybe things would settle back into place. But her instincts told her otherwise. There was something she couldn't quite name, but she felt it. The unease, the distance, the emptiness in Chris's eyes. What Shannon could never have known was that the man she loved, the father of her children, was no longer hers. His heart, his time, and his devotion already belonged to someone else. August 12, 2018. The night air was still and heavy as Shannon Watt's plane touched down in Colorado. She had spent the weekend in Arizona for business, pushing through the exhaustion that came with being 5 months pregnant, juggling work, motherhood, and a marriage she was desperately trying to hold together. By the time she landed, it was nearly midnight. Her close friend, Nicole, had waited for her. Nicole knew Shannon well enough to see when she was worn down, and tonight, it was written all over her. Still, Shannon smiled. She was grateful. Grateful for a friend who cared enough to make sure she got home safe. The 2 women drove quietly through the darkness. The highway stretched endlessly under the glow of the car's headlights. Most of the world was asleep. But inside that car, conversation flickered between laughter and silence. Nicole would later say Shannon seemed tired, yes, but also relieved to be heading back to her children, Bella and Celeste, who were fast asleep at home. When the car finally turned into the quiet streets of Frederick, the houses stood dark against the sky. It was just after 2 a.m. when Nicole pulled into the Watts driveway. The neighborhood was motionless. Not a light on. Not a sound to be heard. Shannon unbuckled her seatbelt, gathering her bags, her suitcase from the trunk, her purse slung over her shoulder, and her work materials tucked under her arm. The weight of her belongings mirrored the weight she carried in her heart, worries she had only recently confessed to friends. Nicole leaned across the console and gave her a hug goodnight. Neither woman could have imagined it, but this embrace would be their last. With steady steps, Shannon walked up the driveway. The faint outline of her figure was captured on a neighbor's security camera, the final image of her alive. She reached the front door, adjusted the strap on her shoulder, and disappeared inside the house. Nicole sat for a moment in her car, watching the doorway. She wanted to be sure her friend was safely inside before she left. When the door closed, Nicole drove away, headlights cutting back into the dark. Inside, what unfolded next would never be fully seen. No camera. No witness. Only silence behind closed doors. What is known is that by the time the sun rose over Frederick, Shannon Watts would never be seen alive again. By late morning on August 13th, concern for Shannon Watts is no longer just quiet worry. It's panic. Nicole Atkinson, her close friend, had dropped her off only hours before, and now every attempt to reach her has failed. Calls, texts, voicemails. Nothing. Nicole drives straight to the Watts house. The sight that greets her immediately feels wrong. Shanann's car is sitting quietly in the garage. It hasn't moved. Inside, she finds her purse, her keys, her phone, all of it still there. Shanann would never leave without those essentials. Especially not with two little girls. Nicole calls the police. Soon, officers arrive. Their body cams record every detail. They step carefully through the home, taking in the quiet. No sign of forced entry. No chaos. No broken windows. Yet, something doesn't feel right. Chris Watts walks in while officers are still inside. He's cooperative, speaking calmly, even joking at times. But beneath that calm, something is unsettling. His wife and daughters are missing, yet he doesn't pace the floor. He doesn't call out their names. He doesn't even seem surprised. Neighbors join the growing scene outside. One of them invites detectives to review his surveillance footage. Together, they huddle around the screen. The recording shows Chris backing his truck into the driveway early that morning. He claims he was simply loading tools. But the movements, the timing, don't sit right with detectives. Even more telling is the neighbor's reaction. Off camera, he mutters that Chris is acting strange. Very unlike himself. Detectives notice it too. Chris keeps shifting on his feet, crossing his arms, glancing at the screen, then looking away.
Chris, I had noticed that he wasn't watching the tape. He was looking down at his phone a lot, he was looking away a lot, and every time he did say something, he was trying to prove a point.
No cars came through because I guarantee with the headlights, it picked up the headlights.
Oh yeah. And my evidence said that at 5:27, my garage door was left open.
I definitely was watching Chris's body language, and at that point in time, he definitely could have been freaking out because his wife was gone and his children were gone. I just personally thought the way he was acting was a little strange. As a father, like, my eyes would have never left that.
Piece by piece, suspicion begins to form. What was first seen as a missing persons case now feels different. The calm husband, the untouched belongings, the footage, the uneasy stares between officers. This is the moment when investigators first sense the truth. Something far darker is unfolding behind these walls. Because Chris's story doesn't add up. Days after Shanann and the girls vanish, Chris Watts steps outside his home to face the cameras. The nation is watching. Reporters gather in the driveway, microphones extended, lights glaring in his face. And there, on his porch, Chris delivers what he calls a plea. He tells the world he wants his family back. He says the house feels empty without them. He insists he needs to see his daughters again. But the performance is jarring. His voice never rises. His eyes shift from side to side, avoiding direct contact with the cameras. His arms remain folded tightly across his chest, as though he's shielding himself rather than opening up. Neighbors, who knew Shanann as lively, warm, and full of love, are uneasy. They notice his posture. They catch the lack of emotion in his tone. One even whispers to a reporter off camera, "Something isn't right." Meanwhile, Shanann's parents, hundreds of miles away, break down on live television. They cry openly, begging for their daughter and granddaughters to come home. The pain in their voices is undeniable, raw, human. Against their anguish, Chris's flat delivery feels even colder. Body language experts watching the footage point out subtle tells. His shallow breathing. The stiffness in his movements. The way his words sound rehearsed, as if strung together for appearance rather than emotion. To the casual viewer, he looks uncomfortable. To seasoned investigators, he looks like a man holding back. And detectives are not fooled. While Chris speaks to the public, investigators are quietly tightening the net around him. They're comparing his words with evidence. They're analyzing his timeline down to the minute. They're reviewing surveillance, data, and his movements. Chris, still standing before the cameras, doesn't know that every sentence he utters is being dissected by the very people who will expose his lies. He doesn't realize that the walls are already closing in. Because while his plea is broadcast to the world, detectives already know. Chris Watts is running out of time. As investigators dug deeper, a chilling revelation emerged. Chris Watts, the man pleading for his family's safe return on television, wasn't living the life he claimed. Behind closed doors, he was leading a double life. Through interviews, phone records, and digital footprints, detectives uncovered the name Nicole Kessinger. She wasn't just a casual acquaintance. She was the other woman, a co-worker at Anadarko Petroleum. Someone who, just weeks before Shannon vanished, had become Chris's obsession. At first, their relationship seemed ordinary. Quick conversations in the office. Harmless exchanges. But soon it escalated into something secretive. Detectives pieced together the evidence, phone calls that stretched late into the night. Hidden text messages deleted and resent. Weekend meetings disguised as errands. Chris was weaving a second story for himself, one where Shannon and the children no longer existed. While Shannon was sharing joyful updates on Facebook about her growing family, Chris was making plans for a life without them. Investigators discovered internet searches on his phone that revealed his frame of mind. Romantic getaways, vacation packages, jewelry websites, even how to prepare for a new financial start. To friends and family, Chris looked distracted. To detectives, these searches were damning. The contrast was jarring. Shannon's videos showed her cradling her baby bump, filled with hope. Meanwhile, Chris was texting Nicole about their future. A home together. Adventures ahead. A clean slate. He told her he was at the end of his marriage. He said he was ready to leave. But what Chris left unsaid was how far he was willing to go to make that fantasy real. When the affair came to light, Nicole Kessinger would later insist she never knew about the murders until after the news broke. In her interviews with police, her voice cracked as she explained her shock. She claimed she had believed Chris's lies, that he was separated, that his marriage was collapsing on its own. But investigators couldn't ignore the timing. The intensity. The way Chris's devotion to Nicole seemed to coincide with the unraveling of his family life. For detectives, this discovery was more than scandal. It was motive. Suddenly, Chris's detached body language during interviews, his emotionless pleas on camera, his rehearsed answers, they all fell into place. He wasn't a desperate husband searching for his wife and children. He was a man desperate to cover the truth. But while the affair explained why Chris may have done what he did, police still needed proof that tied him directly to the crime. What investigators didn't realize yet was that Chris himself would eventually provide it, in ways he never intended. By now, investigators had enough reason to doubt Chris's story. His calm tone, his odd body language, his affair. It all pointed to something darker. But suspicion alone wasn't enough. They needed a strategy to break through his facade. That's when they offered him a polygraph test. To everyone's surprise, Chris agreed. A man who claimed he had nothing to hide walked willingly into the very trap detectives had set for him. Inside a small, sterile room, Chris sat down. A chair. A table. No distractions. Wires were carefully clipped to his chest, his arms, his fingers. The examiner explained how it worked. The test would measure his breathing, his pulse, his stress. Chris nodded, expressionless, as though this was just another box to check off. The first questions were simple. His name. The date. Harmless control questions to establish a baseline. Chris answered calmly, his voice flat. But then the examiner leaned in with the real ones. Do you know where Shannon is? Did you cause Shannon's disappearance? Did you physically harm Shannon in any way? Each time, Chris said no. But the monitor told a different story. The needle spiked. The lines jumped erratically. His breathing quickened. The silence in the room seemed to magnify every twitch, every pause. When the test was over, Chris waited quietly.
Did you physically cause Shannon's disappearance?
No.
Are you lying about the last time you saw Shannon?
No.
Do you know where Shannon is now?
No.
This portion of the test is complete. Please remain still while I take the answer.
Minutes passed before the examiner returned. The verdict was blunt. There's no way you pass this test. Chris's mask of control began to slip. He leaned forward, rubbing his face. His answers grew short, his composure fading. For the first time, The confident husband who had appeared on camera, begging for his family's return, looked cornered. Detectives pressed harder. They reminded him of Shanann's parents. Of his daughters. They told him they knew he wasn't being honest. The weight of the room bore down on him. And under that pressure, Chris finally cracked. He opened his mouth and began to speak. But the words that came out weren't the full truth. They were something else. A half-story. A diversion. The first of 2 confessions. Inside the small interrogation room, the silence was suffocating. Chris leaned forward, his elbows pressed hard into the table, his face hidden in his hands. The confident mask he had worn for days was gone. Detectives had just told him he failed the polygraph. Badly. There was no debate. No more denial. The walls were closing in. And then Chris spoke. At first, his words tumbled out in fragments. He shifted. He hesitated. He wiped at his eyes, though no real tears came. And then he said the words investigators had been waiting to hear. He admitted he had killed Shannon. But the story didn't stop there. It twisted. It warped into something cruel. Because Chris refused to shoulder the full blame. Instead, he spun a tale meant to protect his own image. He claimed that when he came home, he had seen something unimaginable. He said Shannon had harmed their daughters. And in a fit of rage, he said he reacted. It was a lie designed to smear Shanann's name. A desperate grasp for sympathy. A calculated attempt to paint himself not as a monster, but as a man provoked.
You did not pass the polygraph test.
Okay.
Okay.
I did not lie on this polygraph. I am.
It's not even an option right now because you did not pass the polygraph, so I know you were being deceptive. So that's not even an issue right now. The issue right now is what happened to Shanann, Bella, and Celeste.
Like, I want them back home, like.
But you know they're not coming back home.
For anyone listening, the story was unbearable. Shannon was not there to defend herself. And now, even in death, she was being dragged into his cover-up. Detectives sat still. They didn't shout. They didn't accuse. They had seen this tactic before. A guilty man admitting just enough to seem cooperative, while burying the truth under layers of manipulation. To Chris, it may have felt like a way out. But to investigators, it was confirmation. He wasn't just lying. He was rewriting the script in real time. And the more he spoke, the clearer it became. This was not a man telling the truth. This was a man cornered. Chris's first confession was not a confession at all. It was a weapon. Another betrayal. Another twist of the knife. But detectives were patient. They knew his story didn't line up. They knew the truth was still hidden. And what he had really done was far darker than anything he had just admitted. Chris's first confession had already shaken investigators. But something about it didn't ring true. It was too neat. Too convenient. And the detectives knew it. They had seen the lies unravel before. They had heard the false blame before. And now, they were determined to dig until the real story came out. Hours into questioning, the silence in the room grew heavy. Chris's hands fidgeted. His eyes darted from wall to wall, as if looking for an escape. But there was none. The truth was cornering him. Step by step. Word by word. Detectives leaned in closer. They reminded him of Shannon. They reminded him of Bella and Celeste. Their smiles. Their laughter. Their innocence. His walls began to crumble. And then he broke. This time, there was no finger-pointing. No desperate attempt to cast blame elsewhere. The mask he had carefully worn for years shattered. And out came the darkness he had been hiding. Chris admitted it all. He admitted that Shannon never hurt their daughters. That it was him. That it had always been him. In a flat voice, he told investigators that he strangled Shannon in their bedroom. A place meant to be safe. A place built on trust. A place she should have been able to rest without fear. That night, it became a place of betrayal. But what came next was even harder to hear. Chris confessed that he turned on his own daughters. He admitted to smothering Bella and Celeste. 2 little girls who only knew him as Dad. 2 little girls who trusted him with their whole world. The details were so horrific, investigators could barely keep their composure. Even seasoned detectives, hardened by years of facing tragedy, were shaken by what he said.
I saw on the monitor, those covers were like pulled off and she was just laying there. Blue. She was in there with her children.
What happened?
I put my hands around my wife's neck and did that same thing. I saw on the monitor, those covers were like pulled off and she was just laying there. Blue. She was in there with her children.
What happened?
I put my hands around my wife's neck and did that same thing.
He had not just ended lives. He had destroyed the very family he had once presented to the world as perfect. This wasn't a crime of passion. It wasn't a moment of lost control. It was a choice. Cold, calculated, unforgivable. And yet, this was only part of the nightmare. Because even after admitting what he had done, Chris revealed something else. Something that made the tragedy even more unbearable. The horror didn't end inside that house. It continued long after, in ways too disturbing to imagine. And that is where the case takes its darkest turn. After hours of interrogation, Chris finally revealed what detectives had been waiting for: the location. It wasn't in town. It wasn't near the neighborhood where Shanann's friends had frantically searched. It was out in the middle of nowhere. A desolate oil field, nearly 40 miles from the comfort of their family home. A place Chris knew better than anyone. It was his work site, the ground he walked on every single day.
Where are they?
At that first location I went to that day. That's every 319.
So, Chris, are they in something? Are they under the ground? Like, where would you find them? You take us out there?
I thought there's no way I wanted to walk there. Are they all three out there, Chris? Yes.
Investigators drove down endless dirt roads, past the jagged outline of storage tanks, until they reached the spot he described. What they found there would haunt them forever. Beneath the scorching Colorado sun, search crews combed the dry earth. Within hours, the first grim discovery was made. Shanann's body, buried in a shallow grave, her life concealed by just a thin layer of soil. There was no care, no dignity, no trace of love in the way she was left. She was 24 weeks pregnant. But what came next was even more horrifying. Just a few yards away stood two massive oil tanks. Investigators peered inside, and their worst fears became reality. Chris had hidden his daughters, Bella and Celeste, inside the tanks. Their small bodies discarded in the same place he collected his paycheck. The method was cold. The act, unthinkable. These were not strangers to him. They were his family, his children. Yet he had treated them like refuse, concealed in industrial containers, as if erasing them from sight would erase what he had done. 4 seasoned detectives, it was a moment they would never forget. Grown men stood in silence. Some fought back tears. Even for those who had seen the worst humanity had to offer, this crime stood apart. When Shanann's father, Frank Rzesek, was told what had been done to his daughter and granddaughters, his grief spilled into the public eye. In interviews, his voice cracked. He pleaded for people to remember them, not for this horror, but for who they truly were. Shanann, a devoted mother. Bella, a little girl with an infectious laugh. Celeste, full of boundless energy. He begged the world to say their names, to never let them fade. The country was shaken. Headlines dominated national news. Social media erupted in disbelief and outrage. How could a man who smiled in family photos, who spoke of being a loving father, carry out something so monstrous? The illusion of the perfect family was shattered. Chris Watts, once seen as the quiet, dependable husband, was now infamous. The betrayal cut deep, not just for Shanann's loved ones, but for a nation that had believed, even if for a moment, that monsters could be recognized before they struck. But the world was about to see even more. Because when the trial began, Chris Watts would face justice. And the mask he had worn so carefully would be ripped away for good. In November of 2018, Chris Watts walked into a Colorado courtroom and changed his plea to guilty. He did it to avoid the death penalty, striking a deal that ensured he would spend the rest of his life behind bars. No chance of parole. No second chances. Just concrete walls and silence.
Christopher Watts has pleaded guilty to killing his pregnant wife Shanann and 2 young daughters.
When the judge handed down 5 consecutive life sentences, the weight of the words hung heavy in the room. Justice had spoken, but no sentence could bring Shanann, Bella, or Celeste back. In that same courtroom, Shanann's family rose to speak. Through tears, her parents and brother described a daughter full of light, and 2 little girls who never got the chance to grow up. They didn't speak with anger, but with love. They wanted the world to remember Shanann as a devoted mother, not just a victim. They wanted Bella and Celeste remembered as children whose laughter once filled their home. Chris sat quietly, expressionless. The same calm mask he wore in television interviews before his arrest. But now, the world could finally see what lay beneath. A man who destroyed the very people who trusted him most. Proof that monsters can wear the calmest smiles. Do you think his sentence was enough? Tell us in the comments, and share where you're watching from. And this case leaves us with one haunting truth. The ones closest to us are sometimes the ones we should fear most. In our next documentary, we'll uncover another marriage built on lies, one that ended in blood. And while this chapter closes, the world of true crime continues to reveal stories of deception, double lives, and the tragic cost of misplaced trust. Next time, we'll uncover another chilling story of betrayal and tragedy. Before you go, if you found this story compelling, insightful, or important, please like this video, share it with someone who cares about true crime awareness, and subscribe for more in-depth, narrative-driven documentaries. Your support helps these stories reach more people, honor the victims, and keep their memories alive.